Please tell me Mr. Ramos is not replacing me as Dr. Doom via Parker Robbins. Is there something you're not telling me? Anyway, I don't want to step on your...
What happens when the man who built the Marvel Cinematic Universe decides he's had enough? Not enough like a polite retirement speech. Not enough like a quiet fade-out into Hollywood legend status. I'm talking snap, like the kind you felt in your chest the day you watched Tony Stark take his last breath in Endgame. Only this time, the snap isn't in a movie. It's real, and the target isn't Thanos, it's Disney. For over a decade, Robert Downey Jr. wasn't just an actor in a franchise. He was the franchise. Without him, there is no MCU. No billion-dollar box office runs, no decade-long payoff, no shared universe as we know it. And for years, Marvel knew it, Disney knew it, fans knew it. But here's the thing about loyalty in Hollywood. It only lasts as long as it's profitable. Behind the scenes, the cracks had been forming for years. Missed expectations, box office bombs dressed up as victories, a growing disconnect between what fans wanted and what executives decided they were going to get. The kind of creative drift that can sink even the biggest brand in the world. And Robert Downey Jr., he'd been watching it all, quietly, patiently. But now, he's done watching. In private, insiders say he snapped. No more polished interviews, no more smiling through bad scripts, no more pretending the MCU was still the same machine that launched him from career purgatory to global icon. The man who once carried Marvel on his shoulders has just thrown down the gauntlet, and it's aimed squarely at the people who signed his paychecks. But this isn't just a celebrity versus studio spat. If what's being reported is true, this is a full-scale rebellion inside Marvel's highest ranks, one that could derail not only the next Avengers film, but the entire plan for the MCU's future. Why? Because Disney didn't just cross a line, they bulldozed right over it, and in the process, they may have pushed their biggest star into becoming their most dangerous enemy. Here's how it happened. It was supposed to be Marvel's next big torch-passing moment, the kind of storyline shift that could carry the MCU into an entirely new era. A young prodigy named Riri Williams steps into the spotlight, donning a high-tech suit of her own in the Ironheart series, positioned as the spiritual successor to Tony Stark himself. The pitch was bold, the marketing was confident. This was the future of Iron Man, we were told, and on paper, it should have worked. But from the moment the first episode dropped, something felt off. Fans weren't rallying behind Riri the way they had with Peter Parker, or even Shuri in Black Panther. They weren't debating theories or flooding social media with clips. Instead, the online chatter was cautious, confused, and in some corners, downright hostile. Critics, of course, had their talking points ready. They praised the show's themes, its representation, its necessary place in the cultural conversation. But the wider audience, they weren't buying it. Not emotionally, not even ironically. Streaming numbers told the story first, then the memes followed. And before long, Ironheart wasn't the exciting next chapter of the MCU, it was the punchline. Inside Disney, the panic alarms went off immediately. Budgets were slashed and doubled. Marketing strategies were rewritten on the fly. Emergency meetings popped up so often the boardroom looked like a military war room. But no matter what they tried, new trailers, rebranded social media campaigns, surprise cameos, the audience didn't bite. Worse, the data coming in from streaming platforms revealed something far more alarming than low views. Fans weren't finishing episodes. In industry terms, it's called completion collapse, when viewers start a show but drop off before the credits roll. For Ironheart, it wasn't a minor dip, it was a cliff dive. People weren't just losing interest, they were tuning in to roast it, tearing it apart on YouTube, Reddit, and TikTok, and then walking away. That's when Disney decided to pull out their nuclear option. If the audience wouldn't rally around Riri Williams on her own, they'd bring in the one person who could, the face of Marvel himself, Robert Downey Jr., the man who'd already saved the MCU once before. On paper, it was a can't-fail move, a quick cameo, a couple of interviews, a wink and a nod from the man who made "I am Iron Man" the most quoted line in superhero history. That should have been enough to breathe life into the project. But this wasn't 2012. The Marvel Robert Downey Jr. had once believed in wasn't the Marvel calling him now, and that's where everything started to unravel. At first, it sounded harmless, maybe even fun. Disney would set up a few interviews, a convention appearance, maybe a lighthearted segment on late-night TV. All Robert had to do was smile, crack a couple of Iron Man jokes, and say a few nice things about Ironheart. But somewhere along the way, the tone shifted. It wasn't just, hey, give the show a little boost. It became a coordinated PR push. Scripted talking points, carefully phrased answers, and a clear message. This show wasn't just good. If you didn't like it, the problem was you. Executives wanted Robert to go further, much further. He wasn't just supposed to praise Riri Williams. He was expected to defend her and the show by attacking the critics. That meant calling out controlling fan behavior, suggesting that negative reactions were rooted in controversy. And here's the thing, Robert Downey Jr. isn't naive. He's been in Hollywood long enough to see how these narratives executives get weaponized. He knew exactly what was happening. Inside sources say the pressure came from the very top: Bob Iger, Kevin Feige, and other Marvel brass, all reminding him of his contractual obligations. They pointed to clauses in his deal for Avengers Doomsday, the massive MCU film he was rumored to return in. They told him his participation in this PR campaign was non-negotiable. Robert pushed back, politely at first, but every no was met with more pressure, more reminders about what he owed the brand, and eventually the conversation stopped being about Ironheart at all. It became about control, about whether Robert Downey Jr., the man who rebuilt Marvel from the ground up, would be willing to stand in front of cameras and gaslight the fans who had been with him since day one. The breaking point came during a private video call, one insiders describe as explosive. RDJ didn't mince words. "I won't play this role." And he wasn't talking about Tony Stark or Dr. Doom. He was talking about becoming Disney's scapegoat, the smiling shield between the executives and the fans they'd alienated. From that moment, there was no going back. The star who wants to find the MCU wasn't just refusing to help. He was ready to walk away entirely. And that's when Disney realized they'd just started a war. The thing about Robert Downey Jr. is he's not the kind of guy who shouts for show. When he blows up, it's because something has been building for a long, long time. This wasn't just about a TV series. This was about years of watching the house he helped build start to rot from the inside. Insiders say the video call started civil. Kevin Feige, Bob Iger, a few other high-ranking execs on the line. The usual pleasantries, the "we appreciate everything you've done for the brand" kind of talk. Then the real pitch started. A little heavier this time, more direct. The phrases brand loyalty and long-term vision kept coming up. Robert let them talk. He's patient that way. But patience only works until someone tries to sell you a story you know isn't true. And that's what happened next. One exec allegedly told him, point blank, that his support for Ironheart was critical to maintaining the illusion of momentum for Marvel's Phase 5 rollout. That without him, fan sentiment could tank the next Avengers movie before the trailer even dropped. In other words, lie for us, or watch the house burn down. That's when Robert lost it. He didn't just refuse, he torched the entire premise. He told them straight, if Ironheart failed, it wasn't because of fans. It was because Marvel had forgotten how to tell a story people actually cared about, because they'd replaced characters with checklists, arcs with algorithms, heart with hype. The line insiders say he dropped: "I won't play this role. Not for Tony, not for Doom, not for anyone. You're asking me to gaslight the people who built me. That's not going to happen." Silence. For a moment, no one knew what to say. It wasn't supposed to go like this. RDJ was supposed to nod, smile, and sign on the dotted line. Instead, he'd just made it clear. Not only was he walking away from Ironheart, he was willing to walk away from everything. And here's the thing about moments like this. They don't stay private for long. Within days, whispers about the blow-up were making their way through the Marvel machine. Agents heard about it. Other actors heard about it. Hollywood heard about it. And in an industry built on image, the idea that Robert Downey Jr., Iron Man himself, had just stood up to Disney, that was dangerous. Because if he could do it, maybe other stars could too. But what really made this moment explode wasn't just the argument. It was the fact that Robert knew exactly what Disney was trying to do. He'd seen it before. And that takes us to the pattern. Robert Downey Jr. might be the face of Marvel, but he's not blind to Hollywood's habits, especially Disney's. And when he looked at the Ironheart situation, he recognized the playbook instantly. You've probably seen it too, even if you didn't realize it. A project drops, the hype is huge, the brand declares it a game changer. But then the audience watches it and something's off. The pacing drags, the writing feels forced, the magic isn't there. Fans start voicing concerns online, reviews start to dip, memes start flying, and instead of taking that criticism on the chin and asking what went wrong, the studio flips the script. Suddenly it's not the story's fault, it's the audience's fault. You didn't get it, you're afraid of change. And to deliver that message, they don't send out the director, they don't put a producer in front of a camera, they wheel out the most beloved actor from the project, hand them a carefully worded statement, and ask them to make the fans feel guilty for not loving it. Sound familiar? Robert thought so too. He'd seen it just a year earlier with Obi-Wan Kenobi. The show struggled with pacing, writing, and reception. Fans voiced their concerns, some legitimate, some not. And then, almost overnight, Ewan McGregor appeared in a polished video, condemning hateful Star Wars fans and framing all criticism as rooted in controversy. The message was clear. If you didn't like the show, you weren't just a disappointed fan. You were part of the problem. And here's the thing, it worked for Disney once. They took heat off the creative team and shifted the narrative. But it also left a bad taste in a lot of mouths, including Robert's, because he saw it for what it was. A shield, not for the actor, for the brand. So when Marvel came to him with the same game plan for Ironheart, he wasn't surprised. He was just done playing along. He'd watched this pattern stretch beyond Star Wars. Pixar had done it. Marvel had done it before with other stars. The formula was always the same. Weaponize the goodwill of a fan-favorite actor, deflect blame, and avoid accountability. Only this time, they picked the wrong legend to run it on, because Robert Downey Jr. wasn't about to stand in front of millions of fans, many of whom had been with him since his first shaky press tour for Iron Man in 2008, and tell them they were wrong for not loving a show that wasn't built for them in the first place. And when he refused, he didn't just break the cycle, he exposed it. But if you think that was the end of the story, you haven't heard about the role that could have changed everything. The role of Dr. Doom. Doom. Here's the part Disney really didn't want getting out, because up until now you might be thinking this was just about Ironheart. It wasn't. Behind the scenes, Marvel had been cooking up what they thought was their ultimate power move, a way to bring Robert Downey Jr. back into the MCU without undoing Tony Stark's emotional send-off in Endgame. The plan? Not Iron Man, not a multiverse variant, Doctor Doom. Yes, the most iconic villain in Marvel's catalog. A genius, a tyrant, a sorcerer, a ruler. The kind of character that could dominate the next decade of MCU storytelling. And when word of that possibility leaked to the fandom, people went wild. But here's the kicker. Insiders say the talks weren't just casual. They were real. Disney had already been in closed-door negotiations with RDJ for months. They pitched him a fresh, darker arc, a way to reinvent himself in the Marvel universe as its ultimate threat. Not nostalgia, not a cameo, a full transformation. And Robert, he was interested. This wasn't about cashing in. This was about the challenge, about shaking up his own legacy, proving he could vanish inside a role so completely that fans would forget they were watching Tony Stark. It could have been a game changer. It could have re-energized the MCU in a way no surprise cameo ever could. But then came the catch. You want Doom? Fine. But first, you play ball. You promote Ironheart. You defend it publicly. You make the critics look like jokers. The fans look like villains. You tell the story we want told. And then we'll sign the Doom deal. That was it. That was the line in the sand. Because for Robert Downey Jr., Dr. Doom wasn't worth selling out his principles. He wasn't going to buy his way back into Marvel by lying to the audience that had stood by him for over a decade. So he walked. The Doom contract was left unsigned. The role that could have been Marvel's masterstroke? Frozen. The story that could have dominated headlines for the right reasons? Gone. And here's the savage irony. Disney thought they were holding all the cards. They thought they were playing chess, but they didn't realize their queen had just flipped the board. The moment Robert Downey Jr. walked away, the ripple effect inside Marvel was immediate. The Avengers Doomsday script put on hold. Marketing plans paused. Merchandise tied to the movie's big twist villain frozen in warehouses. But it wasn't just about the logistical mess. It was the message this sent through Hollywood. If Iron Man himself could walk away from the biggest entertainment company in the world over a matter of principle, what did that say to every other star currently under contract? And the whispers started. Chris Evans, Anthony Mackie, Mark Ruffalo, actors who had been expected to play ball with Marvel's next phase were suddenly hesitant. Because if Robert Downey Jr., the guy who is Marvel, had lost faith in the studio, maybe they should take a second look at their own deals. Executives noticed fast. Meetings that were supposed to be about filming schedules started turning into conversations about trust, creative direction, and contract flexibility. Disney wasn't just losing a star, they were losing control. The panic spread beyond Marvel. Talent agents started calling other studios, testing the waters for their A-list clients. Competing networks and streaming giants began quietly circling, looking for cracks in Disney's once impenetrable armor. And while all of this was happening, Marvel's track record over the last few years was catching up to them. Eternals had flopped with audiences despite critics trying to spin it as misunderstood genius. Thor: Love and Thunder had turned one of their most powerful heroes into a cosmic punchline. The Marvels had lost money at the box office. The pattern was undeniable. The brand that used to feel bulletproof now looked tired, out of touch, predictable. And here's the cruel twist. The one thing that might have saved them was exactly the thing they'd just destroyed. Because Robert Downey Jr.'s return, in any capacity, would have been the ultimate crowd reset button. The kind of moment that makes even the most jaded fan think, okay, maybe I'll give them one more shot. Instead, they got headlines about their biggest star publicly refusing to defend them. That's not just bad PR, that's a fracture in the foundation. And if that fracture keeps spreading, Marvel won't just lose Robert Downey Jr., they'll lose the very trust that made the MCU possible in the first place. Here's the twist Disney didn't see coming. This wasn't the PR disaster they feared. For a huge chunk of the Marvel fanbase, Robert Downey Jr.'s refusal to play along wasn't a betrayal. It was a relief, because fans have been feeling something's wrong for years. It started as little things, a rushed plotline here, a flat character there. But over time, it became a pattern. Movies that looked great in trailers, but left you cold in the theater. Shows that promised had game-changing stakes, but disappeared from conversation 2 weeks later. And when fans spoke up, they weren't met with, "We hear you." They were met with lectures, accusations, the implication that if you didn't love every new release, you were the problem. But Robert Downey Jr. just did something almost no one at his level ever does. He publicly sided with the audience. He didn't insult the cast. He didn't go after the crew. He didn't make it personal. He simply said, "I'm not going to lie to the people who put me here." And that hit differently. Because this wasn't just a superstar trying to protect his image. This was the man who had been Marvel's heart and soul for over a decade, reminding fans that they weren't crazy, that they weren't hateful for wanting good storytelling, that their loyalty wasn't something to be used wrongfully for quarterly earnings calls. In a way, Robert became the fan's voice inside the machine. And that's why people started cheering. On Reddit threads, in YouTube breakdowns, in fan podcasts, the same comment kept popping up. Finally, someone said it. And here's where things get dangerous for Disney. Once you realize your biggest star agrees with the criticism, it's a lot harder to dismiss that criticism as noise. Because now, it's not just angry tweets or bad Rotten Tomatoes scores, it's Iron Man himself himself telling the world, yeah, this isn't working. And if Disney thought that kind of public sentiment was going to fade away quietly, they were wrong. Because what Robert Downey Jr. just did wasn't just about Marvel. It was about the way this entire industry treats its audience. Let's be clear, this isn't the end of Marvel. The MCU will keep going. There will be more movies, more shows, more hype cycles. But something has changed. Because once the illusion cracks, you can't unsee it. And right now, millions of fans have just watched their most trusted Marvel figure take off the armor and say, I don't trust this anymore. For over a decade, Robert Downey Jr. was the embodiment of Marvel's magic. He turned a bankrupt studio into a billion-dollar powerhouse. He transformed a B-list comic book character into one of the most beloved heroes of all time. He gave the MCU its heart, its humor, its humanity, and in return, the studio tried to use that legacy as a shield for their own mistakes. But here's the thing about Robert Downey Jr. He's lived a life where everything he has could disappear overnight. He's clawed his way back from rock bottom. He knows what's worth protecting and what's worth burning to the ground. So when Disney asked him to trade truth for loyalty, to sacrifice his credibility for a PR spin, he didn't hesitate. He burned the bridge. And in doing so, he lit up the sky for everyone watching. This isn't just about one actor walking away from one studio. It's about the message that sends. Because if Marvel keeps prioritizing branding over storytelling, quotas over character arcs, and lectures over connection, they won't just lose Robert Downey Jr. They'll lose the audience. And no multiverse, no fan service cameo, no billion-dollar marketing campaign can fix that. In the end, the thing that built Marvel wasn't the tech, the costumes, or the special effects. It was trust. Trust that when you walked into a theater with that Marvel logo on the screen, you were going to get something worth your time. And if the man who was Marvel for over a decade is now saying that trust is broken, maybe it's time to start listening.